Chapter 48. As Xue Chengxian spoke, he raised his hand, and a clear light enveloped the injured person closest to him. He raised his hand, and a silver light appeared beside him. As Meng Qi walked toward him, she stared at the silver light carefully. It turned out to be a thin silver needle. Xue Chengxian flicked his finger, and the silver light quickly entered the wrist of the man in front of him. A green jade slip flew out of his storage bag and floated in front of the man's forehead. Meng Qi stood beside him. She watched without blinking as Xue Chengxian did everything in an orderly manner. This was probably how medical cultivators looked like when they made a move, calm, composed, and pleasing to the eye. Xue Chengxian frowned. The silver light came out of the injured man's other wrist and disappeared. Meng Qi knew that he had taken it back. Many medical cultivators would choose silver needles and cauldrons when refining their natal Dharma treasures. Xue Chengxian came from a large medical cultivation sect, so it was normal for him to use silver needles as his Dharma treasures. Meng Qi had just reached the Foundation Establishment Realm. When she reached the Foundation Establishment Realm 5, she would also start refining her natal Dharma treasure. In her previous life, she had chosen cauldrons. In this life, Xue Chengxuan's silver needles looked pretty good. Fellow Daoist Meng. Xue Chengxuan's expression was serious. He handed the green jade slip to her, and Meng Qi held it in her hand. The jade slip emitted a clear light, and the man's condition was instantly imprinted in her mind. The spirit qi in his body had completely dried up, and his spirit sea was like a barren and cracked land. After being corroded by the divine devouring vines for many days, even his blood essence was being consumed. The originally tall and strong cultivator's body was almost hollowed out and extremely weak. Also, Meng Qi's eyes widened. Demonic qi. Xue Chengxian turned and quickly said to Li Anhe, the eldest senior brother of the mystic Cloud Mountain Villa, "Quick, send someone to stop those two people." Okay. The two words devil qi caused Li Anhe's expression to suddenly change. Oh no. He suddenly raised his voice. The Xiuzhe recovering in the snow cave at the middle of the mountain are also. Li in his face was pale as he turned around and strode out of the door. The blood at the corner of Qin Xiumo's lips had turned dark brown, which made his face even paler. I'm afraid I can't stop him if I'm below the spirit severing stage. Spirit severing? Li and he was shocked. Master and Elder have other matters to attend to in the sect. I'm afraid. There were only two cultivators who had just stepped into the spirit-severing realm in the mystic Cloud Villa. However, they had more important matters to attend to. Then don't go to your death, Qin Xiumo said in a hoarse voice as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. But Li Anhe still wanted to say something. Xue Chengxian shook his head and said, "It's my fault. The devil qi is very faint. If you don't examine it carefully, you won't be able to detect it. That black-clothed Xiuzhe seems to be injured. Maybe he was injured by a Mo Xiu, and there is still Mo energy in his body. He had just checked, and the devil qi seemed to be completely harmless. Furthermore, there was only one wisp, and it was very faint and weak. There was no need to expel it, as it would dissipate after 1 or 2 days." Daoist Meng Qi. Xue Chengxian turned to look at Meng Qi, who was deep in thought. "What do you think?" Meng Qi shook his head. "It's harmless for now." She was thinking about another matter. Back then, she had also discovered devil qi in the bodies of Lan Zhuxian and the other Cool Breeze Valley disciples. It was also very faint and weak, and it did not cause any harm to the cultivators themselves. So that black-clothed man was already beside Lu Qingran back then? Back then, those Cool Breeze Valley disciples who were injured by the divine devouring vines did not receive proper treatment. It was only because someone forcefully suppressed the divine devouring vines that Lan Zhuxian and the others suffered an even more serious backlash. The divine devouring vines that injured people in Huajiang Manor this time were similar to the ones that injured Lan Zhuxian and the others previously. This black-clothed man had really healed those people. The method he used was even more tyrannical than Meng Qi's. He directly killed the divine devouring vines in those people's bodies. So that wisp of devil qi should have been left in those cultivators' bodies when he killed the divine devouring vines. In that case, who exactly was he? Qin Shumo also walked over and asked Meng Qi in a low voice, "You think there's a problem?" Meng Qi thought for a moment. "I'm guessing that he pulled out the divine devouring vines that were hibernating in those people's bodies from their blood and directly killed them in their bodies. The devil Qi should have been left behind at that time. He's very powerful." "Yeah." Xue Chengxian also nodded. "He can precisely control the Dharma art and kill the divine devouring vines without harming those cultivators' essences. He's very powerful. No wonder Qin Shumo was injured when he only used 2 fingers just now. He's indeed very powerful." Su Junmo also came over. "Meng Qi, your senior sister is with him. Will she?" He frowned a little worriedly. "Was she coerced?" Qin Shumo glanced at Su Junmo in annoyance. Was it fun to repeatedly mention that he was defeated by the other party in front of Meng Qi? "Should we go and save your senior sister?" Su Junmo asked again. The worry in his tone was real. When Lu Qingran left, she turned back to look at us. Was she asking for help? Fellow Daoist Meng, Xue Chengxian also asked, "If you want to save your senior sister, I can also go with you." "No." Meng Qi shook his head. Lu Qingran would never need her to worry. No matter how powerful a man was, he would quickly become soft in front of her. She had seen even more powerful, bloodthirsty, cold-blooded, and cruel demonic cultivators than this black-clothed man. In the end, they quickly fell under Lu Qingran's skirt and obeyed her every word. Their love for her was unforgettable. But Meng Qi. Su Junmo still wanted to say something. Meng Qi glanced at him. "If you want to go, you can go by yourself." Su Junmo, "That's right. You can go by yourself," Chu Tianfeng also said. Su Junmo, he was speechless. Qin Shumo snorted coldly and said indifferently, "If a hero saves a damsel in distress, the effect will be greatly reduced if he brings too many people to help." Su Junmo, Xue Chengxian saw that the atmosphere was a little awkward, so he quickly said, "Except for the trace of demonic qi, these people have no other problems. Fellow Daoist Meng, I'm going to the snow cave halfway up Mystic Cloud Mountain Villa to check on other injured cultivators." "You. 1200 KSW net I won't go." Meng Qi said, "I have something to do and want to stay in the city." "Okay." Xue Chengxian did not force him. "Then let's meet here tomorrow morning and return to Burnt City together." He cupped his hands toward Meng Qi and the others, comforted the 3 injured cultivators with a few words, and walked out of the door with Li Anhe. Meng Qi was preparing to go to the Sky Beyond Sky relay station. Just now, the jade slip reminded her that her things had arrived. It should be the cold jade box that was prepared to store the jade cicada vine and some slips that recorded the medical cultivation conference. She turned and walked out of the courtyard. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Shumo naturally followed. Su Junmo was stunned for a moment. He stomped his feet and still followed Meng Qi. He was a little worried about Lu Qingran, but he still dared not leave Meng Qi for too long when he thought of the Lord's orders. "You're not going to save her?" Chu Tianfeng saw Su Junmo following and asked coldly. Su Junmo did not say anything. "Meng Qi." Chu Tianfeng moved closer to Meng Qi. "Did you notice? After you said that you're not going to save Lu Qingran, that..." Xue Chengxian suddenly became cold. "Oh." Meng Qi thought for a while. It seemed to be true. These 2 days, he was used to calling him no matter what he did. However, when he said that he was going to the snow cave, Xue Chengxian only asked him out of politeness. "Chenpage." Chu Tianfeng snorted coldly. "Meng Qi, don't worry. If he comes to ask you for the jade pendant, it's the jade pendant that can recommend you to participate in the medical cultivation conference. I'll find a way to get one for you. Our Burning Sky Palace is not a medical cultivation sect. The elders in the sect have medical skills and high cultivation. They have a wide circle of friends. There must be a way." Chapter 49. Then, how can I get there? Meng Qi asked again. "Go there." The staff of Sky Beyond Heaven looked at Meng Qi with a strange expression. "Without the permission of the owner of this place, no one can go up." Meng Qi did not say anything. She raised her head and looked at the floating island that was quietly floating in the air. She began to try her best to recall what happened after she was drunk. However, her head was really dizzy at that time, and she was completely stunned. All she could remember was that the white robe was soft and slightly cold, and the cloud waterfall was magnificent. Other than that, she reached out and knocked her head in frustration. Why did she drink at that time? She even drank an entire cup. Otherwise, she should have been able to see the white-robed man's appearance and remember what he said to her. Meng Qi thought for a moment and asked again, "What about Sky Beyond Heaven Tower? Can I go up now?" "Yes, but if you want to go to the highest level, you need to make an appointment." The person sized up Meng Qi. He remembered her. She was someone that third Miss Xue valued, and he always spoke to her politely. Why don't you go and try now?" "Okay." Meng Qi nodded. Under the guidance of that person, she stepped into the teleportation formation. In the blink of an eye, Meng Qi appeared outside Sky Beyond Heaven Tower. This was the first time Meng Qi had come here. Sky Beyond Heaven Tower was different from the floating island of Xian. The entire floating island was like a large water village courtyard, and the scenery was extremely beautiful. In the distance, there was a lotus pond, a small bridge, and flowing water. The winding path led to a secluded place, and there were some houses of different styles. Other than that, in the center of the entire courtyard was a wooden building that seemed to tower into the clouds. Needless to say, Meng Qi looked up and felt that she couldn't see the top of the building. What the person mentioned just now should be the top of the tall building. Meng Qi turned around and looked to the other side. Sky Beyond Heaven Tower was on the second highest floating island. The highest island floated leisurely on the horizon. From here, she still couldn't see anything. Meng Qi took a deep breath and walked towards the main building of Sky Beyond Heaven Tower. The attendant at the door quickly greeted her warmly. "Do you have a reservation?" "No." Meng Qi shook his head. "Fellow Daoist, are you alone?" "Yes." Meng Qi nodded. "May I go to the top floor?" "My apologies, fellow Daoist." The waiter smiled warmly. "Today, the top 3 floors have been reserved. If you're not an invited guest, you can't go up." Meng Qi nodded. She thought for a moment and decided to enter the Heavens Beyond restaurant under the guidance of the attendant. The inside of the building looked even more spacious than the outside. The decor was not luxurious, but it was simple and elegant. The waiter led her to the 4th floor. Meng Qi sat alone at a square table by the window. Every table here was quite far from each other, so that the guests at each table would not disturb others. The waiter brought over the menu. Meng Qi flipped through it and casually ordered a few side dishes. Not long after, the steaming hot dishes were delivered to them. "It smells so good." When cultivators were in the Sky Beyond Heaven, they felt no different from when they were in the 3,000 worlds. However, no matter how full they were here, they would still be hungry in the real world. Cultivators who could come to the Sky Beyond Heaven were at least golden core cultivators and above. They could fast and fast, so they could only taste the food. In this way, the Heavens Beyond restaurant became the first choice for cultivators from the 3,000 worlds to gather. The dishes in front of Meng Qi were really delicious. As soon as they were served, the aroma assailed her nose, making her feel comfortable. She had something on her mind, but she could not help but be attracted by the exquisite and delicious dishes. The attendant brought the last dish she ordered and placed a pot of tea on the table. "Fellow Daoist, please enjoy." "Excuse me, if I want to go to the top floor tomorrow, can I make a reservation now?" Meng Qi stopped him. "I'm sorry, fellow Daoist, the top floor has been reserved from today until 3 months later. I'm afraid I can't let you go up in the near future." The attendant's smile did not fade. "Do you have any other instructions?" "Thank you." Meng Qi was a little disappointed. In the middle of the Heavens Beyond restaurant, there was a patio that led from the bottom to the top floor. She turned her head and looked, but she could not see the top at all. This was normal. Back then, in the Xian auction house, there was a world with every step. It was not the first time Meng Qi had seen the power of the owner of this place. She retracted her gaze and was about to continue eating when suddenly, from another table of guests not far behind her, there was a sudden exclamation. "Jiyu? Are you sure?" Meng Qi turned her head abruptly. The guest over there probably realized that he was reckless and hurriedly bowed to the people around him to apologize. When he spoke again, his voice was very low. Meng Qi was quite a distance away from them, so she could not hear what they were saying at all. She waved her hand to call the attendant over and asked, "May I ask what the guest just said about Jiyu?" "Oh." The attendant smiled and explained, "The Heavens Auction House will hold the last auction of the month in 2 days. Jiyu is on the auction list now, Bidage." "It's really Jiyu?" Meng Qi confirmed once again. "Yes." The attendant smiled slightly and said confidently and proudly, "This item is the feather of a heavenly demon phoenix. Although it is extremely rare, since the Heavens Auction House has listed it, it will definitely appear in the auction house." Meng Qi nodded. But to start the auction in 2 days, so urgent? She quickly calculated the number of spirit stones she had now. For a Zhuji Shouja, she had earned quite a bit in this period of time. Adding on the 9th grade spirit stones she had obtained today, Meng Qi could definitely be considered a little rich woman among the Zhuji Shouja in the 3000 worlds. It would not be hard to buy Jiyu based on its actual value. However, once this kind of rare and priceless treasure appeared in the auction house, it would not be sold based on its actual value. It was possible for it to be sold at a sky-high price. Meng Qi herself had sold a northern dark pellet at a high price. This Jiyu happened to be the most important and necessary ingredient to treat jackdaw grass, which was little Qi's injury. Meng Qi suddenly stood up and stopped eating. The way to settle the bill at Heavens Beyond was very simple. After signing the bill here, one could go to any Heavens Beyond station in the 3000 worlds and pay the staff there with the spirit stones. Meng Qi quickly signed the bill and quickly walked out of the building. She quickly left Heavens Beyond and returned to the room in Hua Jiang Mansion's Wishing Lane. She didn't know when Little Seven had come out of the beast house and was lazily lying on the bed beside her. Hearing Meng Qi's movements, he also turned his head and opened his eyes to look at her. "Good boy." Meng Qi rubbed his head. "There will be a Jiyu auction in Heavens Beyond in 2 days. I will definitely buy it." She took out the bag of 9th grade spirit stones from her storage bag. These spirit stones, Meng Qi gritted her teeth. If she missed the Jiyu this time, she did not know how long she would have to wait. She could only borrow this bag of spirit stones first. In the future, when she found out who gave it to her, she would earn enough spirit stones to return it to the other party. She used her divine sense to explore the bag. There were a total of 300 9th grade spirit stones in the bag. But was it enough? Meng Qi had never bought the Jiyu before, so she did not know how high the price would be. She thought for a moment and walked to the door. As soon as the door opened, Qin Xiumo and the other 2 people each occupied a corner in the small independent courtyard. With Su Junmo around, it was rare for it to be quiet. "Su Junmo." Meng Qi called him. "I have something to ask you." "What?" Su Junmo's face was a little dark. It was rare that he only answered with 2 words. "Jiyu." Meng Qi paused. "If it was auctioned, how high do you think it would be?" "Jiyu?" Su Junmo's eyes widened. "Is it a real Jiyu? Is it the feather of our heavenly demon phoenix?" "Auctioned? Heavens, heavens, heavens. How many spirit stones can it be auctioned for?" Meng Qi asked. "That's the feather of a phoenix. Do you know that heavenly demon phoenixes are even rarer than white tigers in the demon realm? They can be reborn in flames and are basically immortal. They have no interest in reproducing. Of course, the great heavenly demons, also known as the heavenly demon royal family, have no interest in reproducing. That's why they are becoming rarer and rarer. Back then. How many spirit stones?" Meng Qi was a little speechless. "Let me finish. Where were we? Yes, heavenly demon phoenixes are also a branch of the heavenly demon royal family. Apart from the phoenix and white tiger, the royal family also has the azure dragon, the black tortoise, and the Chilean who made great contributions in the war 10,000 years ago." "Spirit stones?" Meng Qi interrupted Su Junmo again. There were only 2 days left. She had to think of a way to gather as many spirit stones as possible. She really did not have the patience to listen to Su Junmo talk about the great heavenly demon's reproductive difficulties. "If you sell it, One Jiyu will cost about 100 ninth grade spirit stones. But if you auction it, it's hard to buy something like this without at least 500 ninth grade spirit stones. It's possible to double the price. One feather? This time, even Chu Tianfeng exclaimed, no matter how rare a heavenly treasure is, isn't it too much for one feather to be auctioned at such a price? And it's only the feather of a phoenix, not the flesh of a phoenix or anything. It's just a feather. Meng Qi and Su Junmo looked at him in unison. What do you know? Su Junmo instantly forgot that he was angry with the two of them just now. Come. Let me talk to you. Your Burning Sky Palace is a sect that cultivates magic and mainly cultivates fire. Do you know what it means to your Burning Sky Palace if you can refine the Jiyu into your natal magic treasure? Meng Qi had already walked out of the courtyard. Su Junmo's voice was still babbling. She had already begun to think about where to get the money. Qin Xiumo didn't participate in their discussion. As soon as Meng Qi moved, he immediately followed. How many more spirit stones do you need? He asked Meng Qi in a low voice. It's always good to have more. Meng Qi turned to look at him suspiciously. Do you want to pay back the money? Ah! Qin Xiumo choked. He really didn't have any spirit stones, but he reminded Meng Qi, you still have an IOU in your hand. You can ask her to pay back the money. He paused, and a strange smile appeared on his lips. Even if she doesn't have the money, the person with her will pay it back for her. Yes. Meng Qi also reacted. She took out the IOU that Lu Qingran gave her from her storage bag. The black-clothed male cultivator with Lu Qingran was so powerful that he could definitely help her pay back the spirit stones. She quickly walked out of Rosy Lane. I'm going to collect the debt. Qin Xiumo had been waiting outside since the beginning. Seeing that Meng Qi was sometimes frowning and sometimes confused, he asked, you don't have enough spirit stones? If you buy it directly, it might work. It will be very difficult to sell them at the auction, Meng Qi said. Is there a way to buy it directly? Qin Xiumo asked. Do you know who sent the Jiyu to the auction? Of course not. Meng Qi shook her head. They will keep it a secret for the owner of the Jiyu. How much more do we need? It's hard to say. According to Su Junmo, we need to prepare at least 500 ninth grade spirit stones, Meng Qi said. It might not even be enough. Qin Xiumo thought about it and was a little helpless. Even if he hadn't been betrayed and hadn't fallen to his current state, a few hundred ninth grade spirit stones were not a small number for him. Do we have to buy the Jiyu? He couldn't help but ask again. Yes, Meng Qi responded in a low voice. She thought about it and walked towards the Cloud Immortal Pavilion first. Forget it, she should refine some medicinal pills first and sell them for as much as she could. The Cloud Immortal Pavilion sold most of the common medicinal herbs in the 3,000 worlds. Meng Qi spent 200 8th grade spirit stones to buy enough medicinal herbs and the materials needed to draw the array. She almost filled her storage bag to the brim before returning to Rosy Lane. She returned to the small courtyard she rented and let little Qi out first. Then, she closed the door and took out all the spirit herbs and spirit flowers. The bitter medicinal fragrance instantly filled the room. Little Qi jumped onto the bed and turned to look at her. He watched as Meng Qi started to draw the fire formation and took out the small cauldron for alchemy. The array that Meng Qi drew on the ground this time was a little complicated. There were a total of 6 overlapping arrays. The arrays overlapped with each other. In the end, the 6 arrays formed the shape of a hexagram. In the center of the hexagram, there was a new independent array. The small cauldron was placed in the center. Little Qi was a little numb. Meng Qi could even draw the star array of the White Tiger clan, let alone other arrays. He watched as the little girl busily walked back and forth in front of him and guessed what she wanted to do. She wanted the blazing feather. She wanted the blazing feather for her injuries. Little Qi's blue eyes gradually became gentle. He looked at Meng Qi and felt the other was like a hard-working little rabbit, obedient and clever. It made him want to rub her soft hair. At the same time, in the suburbs 300 li away from Huajiang Manor, under the Green Mountain, Lu Qingran helped the black-robed Xiuzhe sit down beside a large rock. They leaned against a large tree. The shade of the tree blocked almost all the sunlight. Only fragments of light fell through the cracks and landed on Lu Qingran's small face. It made the fear in her eyes even more obvious. "You." Her eyes flashed slightly as she murmured, "Are you well?" The black-robed Shouja still wore the bamboo hat, the black veil completely covering his face. His low chuckle was less mocking and more joyful than when he had been in the Black Cloud Mountain villa. He raised his hand, and his slender and pale fingers suddenly grasped Lu Qingran's small chin. "Worried about me, Chem?" His tone carried faint scorn. "Or hoping that I will be more seriously wounded so you can take the chance to escape?" "I'm not. I'm real. Didn't you say before that you could not easily act? Why did you?" As Lu Qingran spoke, her voice softened. She slowly lowered her head. She did not want the other to see the blush on her face and a part of her slender and white neck. "If I don't act to intimidate them, I will not be able to leave that place." The black-robed male snorted coldly. "Those people, other than your Shamai, are all above Jindan, and one is Yuanying. If we really act, who am I now?" The black-robed male suddenly turned his head. Even through the black veil, his gaze seemed to shoot into the distance like a tangible sword. Lu Qingran jumped in fright and also raised her head to look into the distance. Around the two were green mountains that rose and fell. The trees were tall and covered the sky. Then Lu Qingran saw that on the trees around them, at some unknown time, 4 people had silently stood up. The 4 people were wearing deep blue Shouja robes without any insignias on their bodies. They didn't look very old, about 30 years old. However, in the 3,000 worlds with countless beauties, their appearances were at most average. They were the type that would be easily ignored if thrown into a crowd. Yet right now, the 4 people were standing on the treetops, their slender figures slowly rising and falling as the wind blew through the trees. It seemed that there was a hint of murderous coldness to them. Lu Qingran was swept by the gaze of one of the people and couldn't help but shudder. She had not detected when these people had appeared at all. Or, when they left Hua Jiangfu, these people had followed them. The black-robed male did not move and continued to sit firmly next to the large rock. His back was against the trunk of the large tree as though he did not care about the sudden appearance of the 4 Shouja. His right hand slowly moved down and grasped Lu Qingran's hand. An icy and small jade pendant was shoved into Lu Qingran's hand. Lu Qingran turned in shock to look at the black-robed male. He didn't even look at her. The 4 people that had suddenly appeared here were all Yuanying Shouja. When he was unharmed, he naturally would not fear them. But right now, he could not even guarantee that he could escape unharmed. It was even more impossible to take Lu Qingran with him. These years, no matter how fierce the open and covert struggles of the Shouja were, everyone still abided by the rules set by the Shouja alliance on the surface. Lu Qingran nervously swallowed again. She felt that the scene in front of her seemed familiar. Meng Qi, junior martial sister Meng chasing people for spirit stones, she really had not changed at all. Fellow Daoist Lu. The Jindan Shouja of the Shouja Alliance patiently reminded her again. Fellow Daoist Meng has requested to collect the spirit stones that fellow Daoist Lu owes her in 1 day. Fellow Daoist, please do not make things difficult for us, and return the money as soon as possible. Lu Qingran, her face burned even more fiercely than before. She was being watched by 5 unfamiliar and very powerful Shouja. With the black-robed male beside her, she opened her mouth, and her voice was like a mosquito. But I don't have that many spirit stones. Lu Qingran said hesitantly. Don't talk about 9th grade spirit stones. 8th grade spirit stones were an astronomical figure that was out of reach for a Zhuji Shouja like her. Lu Qingran only felt that 6 pairs of eyes seemed to be shooting towards her. She was so ashamed that she wanted to cover her face and immediately run away. Her family was wealthy, and her life since she was born could be considered good. Later, the sect leader of Clearwind Valley took a fancy to her. He felt that her medical talent was outstanding, and brought her back to Clearwind Valley to be accepted as a direct disciple. When she entered the sect, she was greatly doted on by her master. Even the Shixiang and Shijie who entered the sect earlier than her were courteous to her. Even when something happened in Clearwind Valley and she was unanimously criticized by her fellow sect members, she was quickly taken away by the black-robed male. She did not feel embarrassed. But now, in front of so many people, she was being chased for a debt in public. Lu Qingran's face became redder and redder. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and the rims of her eyes turned red. Her nose turned sour. She could not understand why junior martial sister Meng Qi would treat her like this. At the very least, they were once fellow sect members. Also, junior martial sister Meng Qi had earned so many spirit stones. She, as a Zhuji, should not lack money. Why did she have to force her like this? To embarrass her? But this promissory note is personally left by fellow Daoist Lu's consciousness. It is not fake. Then, the Jindan cultivator furrowed his brow. How many spirit stones does fellow Daoist Lu have? 100 grade spirit stones. Lu Qingran's hands trembled as she took out all the spirit stones she had from her storage pouch. Her eyelashes trembled even more, and her nose turned sour. When she took out the spirit stones, tears rolled down her bright cheeks. He had never thought that there would be a day when he would be forced to act like a scoundrel who wanted to renege on a debt because of a few 9th grade spirit stones. Meng Qi, right? He would remember it. Then, the Jindan cultivator said with a slight smile, "We won't force you too hard. According to convention, we will first pay fellow Daoist Lu's debt to fellow Daoist Meng tomorrow." As he spoke, he flicked a small porcelain bottle towards Lu Qingran. "This is a soul-gathering pill, fellow Daoist Lu, please take it. Next, we will assign fellow Daoist some missions until you earn enough spirit stones." The Jindan cultivator paused and then said, "When the time comes, we will naturally give you the antidote." Lu Qingran held the small porcelain bottle, her entire body shaking. The soul-gathering pill could leave behind an imprint in a Shouju's spiritual sea. The most special thing was that only the Shouju who made this soul-gathering pill had a way to remove the imprint left behind by this pill. As long as she took it, it meant that from now on, she would be under the control of these people and would have to listen obediently. Lu Qingran grabbed the black-clothed man's arm in fear. Her tears fell even faster. She didn't want to take the soul-gathering pill. She was really scared. The black-clothed man seemed to sigh softly again. He had already completely calmed down, and his gaze was even sharper than before. He said to the Jindan cultivator, "Give me one." He said, "I will accept the mission with her." "Okay." The Jindan cultivator thought for a moment and flicked a small porcelain bottle. The black-clothed man swallowed the soul-gathering pill without hesitation. "Assign the mission," he said coldly. "Nascent soul 7th stage, you can give as many missions as possible with high rewards. Then we will have to trouble fellow Daoist." The Jindan cultivator smiled slightly. He stared at Lu Qingran and took the soul-gathering pill before flicking out a bamboo scroll. "Mystic Cloud Mountain Villa is requesting help. There are Yarrow Shouju around Hua Jiang Manor who are harming people with divine devouring vines. Please go and kill these Yarrow Shouju. The mission will be based on the number of Yarrow Shouju killed. The reward for killing a 4th stage Yarrow Shouju is 108th stage spirit stones." "Wukuox." The black-clothed man snorted coldly. Under Lu Qingran's careful and worried gaze, he turned and walked towards the big tree he was leaning against earlier. "I know," he said coldly. "I will go and kill them. Thank you, fellow Daoist." The Jindan cultivator from the Shouju Alliance cupped his hands in greeting. He turned and headed towards Hua Jiang Manor with his 4 companions with a smile. "You." Lu Qingran waited for them to leave before slowly walking to the black-clothed man's side. She half knelt, her eyes still red. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault." Chapter 51. Meng Qi quickly received the spirit stones that Lu Qingran owed her from the Hua Jiang Prefecture Cultivator Alliance. "Fellow Daoist, please check." The smiling golden core cultivator handed the brocade bag to her. According to the rules, 1/5 of the spirit stones will be deducted to the alliance. Meng Qi nodded. She quickly glanced at the spirit stones in the brocade bag. Actually, there was not much left. There was still 1 day left. It was hard to think of another way. Shu Qian, these are the inner cores of 2 third-stage demon cultivators. These are the divine devouring vines in their hands. Meng Qi was about to leave when another male cultivator walked into the Cultivator Alliance. Before he came in, his loud voice was heard. It's amazing. The Huajiang Prefecture is far from the demon realm. Why are there so many demon cultivators here recently? And they are all holding this damn thing. Damn, it's really powerful. Luckily, I made sufficient preparations. Otherwise, I might have been hurt by this thing. Heh. You have people here. After that person finished speaking, he had already walked into the Cultivator Alliance's main hall. Meng Qi turned to look at him. The person who came was a strong man who looked about 30 years old. He was actually quite handsome. He had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and short black hair. He looked a little wild and flamboyant. The male cultivator had a full beard and wore a short-sleeved cultivator's uniform. It matched his tone of voice very well. The person he called Su Qian was the Golden Core cultivator who always had a smile on his face. He was obviously very familiar with this male cultivator. He said, Ji Wenyuan, I told you to be careful when you speak in the Cultivator Alliance. Sorry. The male cultivator called Ji Wenyuan lowered his voice. He scratched his head embarrassedly. This sorry was for Meng Qi. The Huajiang Prefecture is a small place. There are very few people here. I didn't know you were here. Don't blame me for offending you. Meng Qi shook her head and smiled at him. Her gaze landed on the 2 divine devouring vines on the ground. Even as a weapon, they were divine devouring vines with green leaves and all kinds of flowers. At this moment, it looked as if it had been burned by something. Half of it had turned into charcoal. Pay up, Ji Wenyuan said to Su Qian. 2 third-stage demon cultivators. I even brought back a divine devouring vine. You'll have to double the price. Su Qian shook his head in amusement and tossed him a brocade pouch. Take it. Let me see. Ji Wenyuan looked into the brocade pouch and muttered, a 3rd-stage yarrow cultivator costs 107th stage spirit stones. 407th grade spirit stones. Wow. Is this divine devouring vine so valuable? You should have said so earlier. No, I brought it back for you last time. Thanks. As Ji Wenyuan spoke, he threw the brocade pouch into his storage pouch, turned around, cupped his hands towards Meng Qi, and strode out the door. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. After Ji Wenyuan left, he took the initiative to ask Su Qian, fellow Daoist, can I exchange these demon cultivators with divine devouring vines for spirit stones? That's right. Su Qian smiled and looked at Meng Qi. A Foundation Establishment cultivator actually felt that a sum of 9th stage spirit stones was not enough for him. Su Qian was a cultivator who had already entered the nascent soul stage. He was already quite happy to earn a few hundred 7th stage spirit stones. He was a little surprised, but he still smiled. A 3rd stage yarrow cultivator costs 107th stage spirit stones. A 4th stage yarrow cultivator costs 108th stage spirit stones. If you bring back a divine devouring vine, you'll be paid the same amount of spirit stones. He hesitated for a while but still said, a 2nd stage demon cultivator costs 106th stage spirit stones. However, there shouldn't be any demon cultivators of this level who can bring a divine devouring vine into the Trichilia chasm. Thank you. Meng Qi cupped her hands towards him. She turned around and walked out of the alliance. Qin Xiumor and Chu Tianfeng, one in black and the other in black, were leaning against the outer wall of the alliance. Su Junmo stood on the other side, looking normal. However, his gaze was obviously accusing Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiumor. Hearing the commotion, the 3 of them all looked towards Meng Qi. Ahem. Meng Qi hesitated for a moment. I want to hunt the demon cultivators from Huajiang Manor who brought the divine devouring vine to invade. She walked straight towards Qin Xiumor. The Cultivator Alliance can use the demon cultivator's inner core and divine devouring vine to exchange for spirit stones. Take it as me hiring you. Other than that, we will distribute the spirit stones fairly according to how much effort we put in. Qin Xiumor hesitated. How many spirit stones can we exchange for? A third-stage demon cultivator costs 100 seventh-stage spirit stones, Meng-Chi said. She was in the foundation establishment stage, and Qin Shuomor had not been completely cured of his qi deviation. Now, he was only at the third or fourth stage of the golden core stage. The only ones they could hunt were third-tier yarrow cultivators. Qin Shuomor hesitated. Then, would he accidentally pay off all his debts? He was not willing to do that. Hunt the demon cultivators from the divine devouring vine? Chu Tianfeng saw Qin Shuomor hesitate. He sneered in his heart, knowing what this guy was thinking. He was just afraid that he would get too excited and pay off his debt in one go. Seeing that Meng-Chi was still not looking at him, he could only go over and say, he doesn't dare to go. I'll go with you. Chu Tianfeng could be considered to have figured out Meng-Chi's thoughts during this period. Of course, the spirit stones exchanged by the Cultivator Alliance will be distributed fairly according to how much effort we put in. He could see that Meng-Chi was very short of spirit stones recently. As the young palace master of the Burning Sky Palace, the sect's resources were naturally given to him. Chu Tianfeng was definitely not short of cultivation resources, but he really did not have many spirit stones. The Dharma treasures that the sect gave him were not cheap, but they could not be casually exchanged for spirit stones. Meng-Chi had taken back Lu Qing Rant's, which was a huge transaction of 9th stage spirit stones. He was still short of money now. Chu Tianfeng really did not dare to pat his chest and say that he would make up for the rest. He could take out a few hundred 8th stage spirit stones, but Meng-Chi would definitely not take it from him for free, and it probably would not be enough. Chu Tianfeng understood this point and instantly made up his mind. He said righteously, Huajiang Mansion is so close to the burning city. If we don't get rid of these guys, it will be troublesome if they run to the burning city and hurt people. I'll go with you. Okay. Meng-Chi nodded. Who said I don't dare? Qin Shuomor glared at Chu Tianfeng coldly. I was just thinking that it would be too troublesome to kill them one by one. Is there any way to gather them together and annihilate them in one go? Chu Tianfeng sneered. Then have you thought of a way? Let's go and take a look first. The two of them were especially united when they were fighting against others or Su Junmo. Once the external threat was eliminated, it would be too easy to betray each other. Let's go, Meng-Chi. Qin Shuomor said, the demon cultivators probably won't dare to enter Huajiang Mansion. After all, the city has a protective array. They won't be able to enter without a token from the Cultivator Alliance. Yes. Meng-Chi nodded. She knew this. If the demon cultivators and demonic cultivators wanted to come and go freely in the 3,000 worlds, they had to be like Su Junmo and have a token from the Cultivator Alliance in their hands. Otherwise, it would be fine in the wild, but once they entered the city's protective array would be activated and they would be automatically attacked. That's not necessarily true. Chu Tianfeng said, I heard from father that the demon cultivators and demonic cultivators have ways to hide their auras and hide from the array. Unless the city's array seems to be supported by a powerful person, they won't be able to be found out. Those who can enter the 3,000 worlds through the barrier cracks are at most 4th stage demon cultivators, which is equivalent to our nascent soul cultivators. Can they hide from the city's protective array? Don't forget, all the protective arrays that can be called cities in the 3,000 worlds were set up by the Cultivator Alliance's top artifact cultivator sects from the 4 realms. Qin Shuomor didn't give in at all and argued back. This method of hiding one's aura is a spell art, not a realm. Chu Tianfeng didn't back down either. Perhaps low-level demon cultivators and demonic cultivators can cultivate their spells to a high realm and hide from the array. Isn't Meng-Chi the same? Some spells can be cultivated to a realm that far surpasses one's own cultivation realm. It's because of this that they can save your life. Don't tell me you've already forgotten. Azu. Qin Shuomor's lips curled up, and his gaze turned cold. You're comparing the demon cultivators to Meng-Chi? F***ck. Chu Tianfeng flew into a rage. He obviously didn't mean it that way. He opened his mouth and his mind spun rapidly, thinking of how to refute. Su Junmo, who had been stunned in place for a while, suddenly chased after them again. Are you guys going to hunt down those invading demon cultivators with divine devouring vines? Then I have to go, he said. Take me with you, Meng Qi. Chu Tianfeng shut his mouth and looked at Qin Xiumor. Qin Xiumor nodded slowly. What are you going to do? Chu Tianfeng asked. There are 3 of us. There's a spell cultivator, Qin, who cultivates both sword techniques, and Meng Qi, who cultivates medicine. It's enough. That's right, and we're going to hunt down rank 3 demon cultivators. There's no need to trouble you, Qin Xiumor added. The 3 of us are enough. We don't want to share the spirit stones with a 4th person. Didn't you guys just say that you want to get rid of these guys together in one go? Su Junmo said, I have an idea. If the 3 of you cooperate with me, we'll even kill the rank 4 demon cultivators together. This way, everyone will have more spirit stones to share. Qin Xiumor and Chu Tianfeng looked at each other again. They couldn't make the decision on this, so they could only look at Meng Qi. Okay. Meng Qi nodded. Let's do as we said just now. We'll split the spirit stones according to how much effort we put in. To her, it didn't matter who she worked with. If Su Junmo joined them, they would get more spirit stones in the end. It was quite good. Chu Tianfeng gritted his teeth and asked reluctantly, What idea do you have? I have an idea too. Meng Qi said, Let's talk as we walk. As she spoke, she took out a bamboo slip and quickly wrote her idea on it. Then, she handed it to Su Junmo. Huh. Su Junmo looked at it and widened his eyes in surprise. It's possible, but this array, he was really a little scared. The method Meng Qi listed was very simple. He and Chu Tianfeng would lure the enemy deep. With Meng Qi himself as bait, they would set up the 4 extreme array to trap the demon cultivators who were lured in. But that was the 4 extreme array. Su Junmo didn't know what expression he should have on his face at this moment. That was a secret technique of the heavenly demon White Tiger clan. It was not taught to non-white tigers. Even after following his lord for so many years, he had only heard of this name and seen his lord use it a few times. As for how to set up the array, he didn't know anything. It was impossible for him to know. This array. Su Junmo muttered and repeated, half testing and half looking at Meng Qi in surprise. His heart was full of doubts. Even his lord couldn't break the rules of the heavenly demon. In other words, I have no idea. As soon as Meng Qi spoke, Su Junmo subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. As expected, Meng Qi still didn't know how to do it. Otherwise, he was hesitating whether he should kneel down and greet Her Highness, the Demon Empress. Set up the entire array. Meng Qi continued. Su Junmo's knees went soft, and he really wanted to kneel. He had thought of many possibilities before. Although he secretly muttered that Meng Qi might be the future Demon Empress, she was still the future, wasn't she? It was more likely that he still felt that this young Foundation establishment cultivator was his lord's little lover in the 3,000 realms. In the future, even if his lord returned to the peak, it would be difficult to bring her back to the demon realm. It would be difficult for the Heavenly Demon Elder Council to agree. Among them was his lord's granduncle. No matter how much his lord doted on Meng Qi, there was little hope for her to officially become the empress. But the 4 extreme array, the Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan would only pass it down to their clansmen. Not everyone in the Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan knew how to set up the 4 extremes formation. Su Junmo could count on one hand those who had mastered it. His lord's granduncle, uncles, his lord himself, an elder of the White Tiger clan, and his lord's cousin. Now there was also Meng Qi. Su Junmo looked at Meng Qi with some despair. Should he kneel? Or not? He decided to struggle. What do you mean you can't set it up completely? Only part of it. Meng Qi glanced at him. Su Junmo's expression looked like despair mixed with sadness, and there was also unwillingness and struggle in the sadness. Was it because of the 4 extremes formation? Meng Qi was a little uncertain. When her teacher taught her, he said that this was a very useful formation to trap enemies. He didn't say that there was anything special about the 4 extremes formation. The complete 4 extremes formation could even trap cultivators 3 levels higher than her. Of course, cultivators 3 levels higher than her could crush Meng Qi in cultivation. At most, they would be trapped for half an hour before they could break out of the formation. No matter what, it would give her a chance to escape. Qin Xiumor shook his head. Su Junmo, he was suddenly a little afraid. If Meng Qi really did set up the 4 extreme arrays later, wouldn't that mean that his lord had already admitted that she was, let's go? Meng Qi had already come out of the Cloud Immortal Pavilion. She walked towards the 3 of them. Su Junmo, according to your understanding, where should we go first? Since the 4 of them had decided to work together to earn spirit stones, they were a team. Meng Qi didn't mince her words. She directly asked Su Junmo, who understood the habits of demon cultivators the most. Su Junmo was still a little dazed. He turned to look at Meng Qi. Now, the other's status in his eyes had become even more different. After a while, he met Meng Qi's clear and calm eyes and instantly quivered. Yes, belong to Meng Qi? What do you mean? Belong to what? Belong to the Red Fox race if they continue to cause trouble. Su Junmo was also a little annoyed. He hurriedly said, their race belongs to the fire element, and they like to stay in the east. As he spoke, he pointed at the east gate. Let's go to the east first. Okay. Meng Qi nodded. The 4 of them quickly walked towards the east gate. Huajiang Prefecture was also considered a prosperous city. Although it couldn't be compared to Burning City, it was still far better than Fresh Breeze Town. The news of demon cultivators using divine devouring vines to hurt people was suppressed by the mystic Cloud Mountain Villa. Ordinary citizens in the city didn't know about it. Only the Cultivator Alliance issued a mission to kill these demon cultivators in exchange for spirit stones. Meng Qi and the others walked towards the east gate. The atmosphere was still harmonious. Divine devouring vines usually wouldn't hurt ordinary people. After all, spirit energy was their best nourishment. After exiting the east gate of Huajiang Prefecture, there was a continuous mountain range. The forest was deep and serene. At a glance, everything was green. These guys like to hide in the dense forest, but... Su Junmo pondered, not knowing what to say. I've seen records about the Red Fox race in books, Meng Qi said. Actually, most of the information she knew about the Red Fox race was told to her by Su Junmo. They like beautiful women. The prettier and more enchanting, the easier it is to arouse their interest. As she spoke, her gaze slowly swept past Chu Tianfeng and the others' faces. Finally, it landed on Qin Xiumor's face. Qin Xiumor, take off your outerwear. Chapter 52. Meng Qi's idea was very simple. These people were all good-looking, but only Qin Xiumor owed her spirit stones. It would be more convenient for her to ask him to help her. Qin Xiumor was stunned for a moment, then the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up. Does this count as Meng Qi's approval that I'm the best-looking? Okay. He looked into Meng Qi's eyes and said softly. His slender fingers pressed on his belt as he asked hoarsely, Are you sure it's me? As he spoke, he glanced proudly at Chu Tianfeng. F***CK. Chu Tianfeng felt a little aggrieved. He was confident that his appearance, family background, figure, and talent in cultivation would not lose to Qin Xiumor. Moreover, he was now in high spirits and full of vitality. Unlike Qin Xiumor, who had not fully recovered and was still sick. Why did Meng Qi choose this guy and not me? Yes. Meng Qi answered casually. He took out a porcelain bottle from his storage bag and handed it to Qin Xiumor. Sprinkle it on your body. What is this? Just in case I get hurt by the divine devouring vines, Meng Qi explained as he turned around and continued walking forward. Chu Tianfeng took a step forward and walked side by side with her. He whispered to her, Can he do it? Don't waste all our efforts. What are you talking about? Qin Xiumor had already taken off his outer robe, revealing his upper body. He was severely injured when he was transcending the tribulation. In order to avoid being hunted down by his former close friend, he had escaped all the way from the southern border where his sect was located. He had stayed at the bottom of the cold pond in Cool Breeze Valley for a long time. His bronze-colored, healthy skin was still a little sickly pale at this moment. However, he was still young after all, so his recovery was still acceptable. His upper body, without a trace of fat, looked tight and tall. Qin Shomor walked beside Meng Qi. While sprinkling the powder on himself, he whispered, "Is this okay?" Meng Qi looked at him indifferently. His eyes were clear without any ripples. She turned to Su Junmo and asked, "Is this okay?" Su Junmo's eyes flashed. "Is that okay?" He didn't know what to say. Meng Qi's eyes were clear and magnanimous. Obviously, he had no thoughts about Qin Shomor. But did she know? White tigers were relatively rare in the demon realm. Once they found a partner, they would be loyal to a single heaven demon royal for life. Their possessiveness was absolutely outstanding in the three realms of human, demon, and demon. Su Junmo pondered what Meng Qi meant. She didn't have any feelings for Qin Shomor, but she obviously thought that he was a beauty. If His Majesty knew, TSK. Su Junmo couldn't help but shudder. Su Junmo. Su Junmo? Ah! He was so engrossed in his thoughts that Meng Qi had to call him a few times before he recovered. What? You, be more careful. Pay attention to the tracks on the road. Meng Qi stared at him for a moment. This Su Junmo seemed to have become strange ever since Hua Jiangfu. His gaze kept moving between her and Qin Shomor. It really wasn't normal for him to be so quiet even when he was far away from the crowd. Oh, okay. Su Junmo nodded and started to seriously observe the surroundings. The four were all shoujo and their steps were not slow. They quickly left Hua Jiangfu behind and entered the depths of the forest. It was hard for the sunlight to shine through the leaves and the surroundings gradually became dark. Small dots of light danced in the forest. The forest was silent except for the rustling of leaves in the wind and the chirping of insects and birds. Chem. Su Junmo suddenly sped up and walked towards a large tree not far ahead. This is. He reached out and wiped a narrow mark on the tree trunk. He turned and called to Qin Shomor, "Come and see." Sword energy. Qin Shomor was a dual cultivator of sword arts and sword arts. His life-bond weapon was a sword. He went forward and saw the 7 or 8 marks on the tree trunk were sword energy. "How is he compared to you?" Su Junmo asked. Qin Shomor held his breath. "He's a Yuanying shoujo." He emphasized, "His sword arts are not as good as mine, but his cultivation is higher. So it's like this." Su Junmo nodded. He looked down at the ground and bent down to pick up a dried leaf. The leaf was yellow and there was a dark brown drop of blood on it. Luckily, Su Junmo's ears were sharp and he immediately saw the dried blood on this little leaf. He put the leaf to his nose and sniffed. "It's red fox hair." Su Junmo laughed coldly. These people had been really arrogant recently. It seemed that many people could not control themselves after Master's presence disappeared from the Yarrow world. "Let me see." Meng Qi went forward to take the leaf. The small drop of brown blood had already dried up. She flipped over the dried leaf and looked. She said in a low voice, "This is also caused by sword energy." Meng Qi raised her head as she spoke. The leaves on the leafy tree were still green. The leaf in her hand looked complete, but the color was yellow. "So domineering." Meng Qi murmured. She had seen this kind of sword energy before, or rather, this kind of Ling energy. It didn't just injure people, it also cut off their vitality. The master of the sword energy could absorb Ling energy from the shoujo and all things that they injured to recover themselves. When fighting against this kind of enemy, the other was almost invincible and very difficult to deal with. Meng Qi's mind moved and something flashed through her mind. But that thought flashed past her mind, and before she could grasp anything, it had already disappeared. "What is it?" Qin Shomor asked. "Nothing." Meng Qi shook her head and knocked on her head. "Let's be careful." She turned and looked around. "It seems that someone has already been here. This bloodstain," she used her finger to lightly wipe it. "It should have been left here 4 hours ago. Huajiang Mansion's Shoujo Alliance has issued a mission to kill these Yarrow Shoujo that sneak across the border and carry divine devouring vines in exchange for Ling stones. There will definitely be many Shoujo participating." Su Junmo seemed to have regained some energy. "Let's hurry." "Okay." Meng Qi nodded. She thought of that Ji Wenyuan. There should be many shoujo like this. Now that they had found the right direction, the four of them continued to walk forward. After walking for about 10 minutes, they arrived at a relatively open space. The surrounding forest was still dense and they could not see the end of it. Along the way, they could see the bloodstains left behind by Scarlet Fox. Occasionally, they would see the sword energy that they had seen before. Let's do it here. Meng Qi looked around. I'll stay here to set up the array. You guys go and lure the enemies. No. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Shomor said in unison, I'll stay and accompany you. No need. Meng Qi shook her head. Even if I encounter a 4th stage demon, I can still hold on for at least 5 minutes. You guys can rush back in time. That won't do. Chu Tianfeng was anxious. What if they all swarm us? Then I can still hold on for 5 minutes, Meng Qi said with certainty. She had once used the 4 extremes array to change the array to stop the enemy. If the other party was a 7th stage or 8th stage nascent soul cultivator, then she really might not be able to hold on for 5 minutes. If it was a demon, she could do it. No. Su Junmo also interrupted. I'll stay. If it was really the 4 extremes array, those stupid and bad Scarlet Foxes would not even need to enter the array. They would be so scared that they would not dare to move for a long time. But what if Meng Qi was bragging? What if she didn't know the 4 extremes array of the heavenly demons at all, but another array with the same name? If something really happened to her, wouldn't his lord tear him apart alive? He did not dare to take the risk. I can really do it myself. Meng Qi felt helpless in her heart. She also knew that her cultivation level was too low, so it was hard for her to convince others. Moreover, she had other ideas. If the Scarlet Foxes were really nearby and saw that she was alone, they would immediately pounce on her. In any case, we can't let you stay alone, Chu Tianfeng said directly. You pick one to stay behind, and the other 2 go find them. Meng Qi, her gaze swept across the faces of the 3 people. Their expressions were extremely firm. It was rare for them to stand on the same side. Chu Tianfeng and the others did not even argue with Su Junmo. The talkative fox was eliminated first. If Qin Shomor wanted to lure the enemy, then, young Palace Master Chu. Meng Qi looked at Chu Tianfeng and said decisively, I'll have to trouble you to stay. Okay. Chu Tianfeng was extremely happy. He raised his eyebrows and the corners of his lips curled up. He stood beside Meng Qi and waved at the other 2. You guys go quickly. Don't waste time, lest that sword cultivator steal Meng Qi's business. Qin Shomor, he and Su Junmo looked at each other, then turned around and walked into the forest side by side. Meng Qi watched the 2 of them leave. She took out materials from her storage bag and began to set up an array in the open space. This was one of the variations of the 4 extremes array. Because it was used to trap enemies and protect their lives, when her master taught her, he forced her to memorize it thoroughly. It was no exaggeration to say that as long as there were enough materials, Meng Qi could set up this array completely even with her eyes closed. She grabbed the materials needed to set up the array and began to busy herself in the open space. Her thin and slender figure was like a diligent sparrow. She diligently drew the formation while skillfully throwing the materials to the various points of the array. The 4 extremes array itself was very complicated, but the first variation of the array wasn't. Meng Qi was a foundation building cultivator. She could draw a complete array even if she exhausted her spirit energy. In the beast house, little Qi lay there lazily. No one could tell what she was thinking from her blue eyes. It could see what Meng Qi was doing. It watched the slender figure quickly draw arrays in the open space. After every array, Meng Qi had to stop and wait for her spirit energy to recover. The 4 extremes array, little Qi's expression was numb. This was the secret of the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. It was far less precious than the star array of the White Tiger clan, but knowing the 4 extremes array meant that Meng Qi was recognized as a member of the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. Of course, it was natural that Meng Qi who knew the star array would also know the 4 extremes array. But who had taught her this? The range seemed to become smaller and smaller. Other than herself, there were only 4 people in the clan who knew the 4 extremes array. Granduncle and the elder had already retired from worldly affairs and hadn't left the Yarrow world for thousands of years. It clearly wasn't them. Then, was it her cousin or her uncle? Little Chi's eyes narrowed slightly as she watched Meng Chi work diligently in the open space. Soon, she had set up 7 or 8 variations of the 4 extremes array on the small open space. They almost covered the entire open space. Little Chi was so angry she almost laughed. This was the Sky Demon White Tiger's great enemy trapping array. If a powerful person set it up, it could trap any being in the 3 realms. In the past, the Sky Demon White Tiger had dominated the world. When the 3 realms heard the name of the 4 extremes array, they would tremble and flee. Did she set it up just to trap those little red foxes? Then she could earn spirit stones. Fine, Meng Chi was also earning spirit stones for herself. Little Chi's furry claws gently rubbed on the ground. He was still a little annoyed. She's here. Chu Tianfeng, who had been guarding at the side, suddenly looked into the distance with a flicker in his eyes. He quickly walked to Meng Chi's side and raised his hand to form a seal. A circle of blue flames instantly ignited around them, protecting the entire open space. Hee hee. Delicate laughter came from all directions. In the midst of the laughter, an extremely enchanting and charming woman's voice sounded. I'm so scared, bang. The blue flame suddenly dimmed. Chu Tianfeng let out a muffled groan and took a step back. His face turned pale. Meng Chi held a handful of 7th grade spirit stones in her hand. There were at least 200 or 300 of them. She held her breath and stood beside Chu Tianfeng. Then, she flicked a small firework. The firework flew into the sky and exploded. This was the communication tool that Su Junmo gave them. After seeing the firework, they would return quickly. Ayo! Amidst the delicate laughter, the Scarlet Fox girl in a red dress walked out. What a beautiful little sister. Big sister likes you. She raised her slender hand, and a thick divine devouring vine rose up and pointed directly at Chu Tianfeng. Little sister, come with big sister. Big sister will treat you well. The men here are all scoundrels. Don't fall for their tricks. The Scarlet Fox girl looked at Meng Chi with a smile. Her eyes wandered around, and she looked very charming. Are you Shuxiang? Come get lost. Chu Tianfeng was furious. He raised his hand, and flames soared into the sky and pounced towards the Scarlet Fox girl. Ayo! The Scarlet Fox girl smiled and dodged. Her originally beautiful face looked even more charming under the illumination of the flames. She smiled and looked at Meng Chi with her charming eyes. Little sister, look at them. They only know how to shout and kill. They are too boorish. They are not worthy of you. Come with big sister. Chapter 53. Meng Chi seemed to be frightened by the red-clothed woman. She hurriedly hid behind Chu Tianfeng and quickly poked her head out to take a look at the woman. When her eyes met the red-clothed woman's, she hurriedly looked away and whispered, "Who are you?" I won't go with you." She looked delicate, timid, and extremely pitiful, which was very suitable for her identity as a Foundation establishment cultivator. Chu Tianfeng had just seen her diligently setting up Dharma arrays in the open space with his own eyes, and he also knew how she planned to earn spirit stones. He had seen Meng Chi's calm and collected appearance countless times, so he was really not used to her current appearance. For some reason, when he saw her like this, Chu Tianfeng actually felt a chill down his spine. He knew that Meng Chi was trying to trick people for spirit stones. No. A yin demon. Little sister. The red-clothed woman smiled sweetly. She waved her hand lightly, and Chu Tianfeng's circle of flames completely disappeared, leaving not even a wisp of smoke behind. The red-clothed woman took a step forward, and the divine devouring vine beside her raised its head and coiled around her, as if it was sticking out its tongue. When Meng Chi saw this, she shrank behind Chu Tianfeng again and only poked her head out to look at the woman. He can't protect you. The red-clothed woman pursed her lips, and the smile in her eyes deepened. As if to prove her words, she took a few more steps forward and waved her hand again. More than 10 shadows instantly pounced on Chu Tianfeng and Meng Chi, who were standing in the middle of the open space. Even the Dharma arrays you painstakingly set up just now can't do anything to me, the red-clothed woman said with a smile. She had been following Meng Qi for a while, so she naturally saw what she had done just now. However, she was a Foundation establishment cultivator, and she did not use any Dharma treasures. Even if the other party set up an inescapable net, she was not afraid. When the red-clothed woman said this, she looked at Meng Qi and Chu Tianfeng's expressions with satisfaction. Meng Qi clearly saw that the other party was still several zhong away from him. In the blink of an eye, that soft and slender hand had already brushed past her cheek. His slightly cold and slender fingers carried a faint fragrance of flowers. As soon as the fragrance entered his nose, Meng Qi felt dizzy. Her body swayed, and the woman in red smiled even more happily. "Don't worry, big sister will definitely treat you well. I like pretty and cute girls the most. Especially when you're acting like this." She leaned closer as she spoke, completely ignoring Chu Tianfeng. She took a deep breath beside Meng Qi's neck and said, "The truth." This was the second time that the woman in red had mysteriously approached Meng Qi. Her movements were extremely nimble. She suddenly came close and then suddenly went far away, all in the blink of an eye. Even the woman in red was no exception. There were too many bees, and they were so dense that they covered the sky and the earth. They almost turned the array in the open space into solid objects. When the bees stung them, they immediately turned into smoke and disappeared. However, the pain was real. In just a moment, the faces of all the beast cultivators who followed the woman in red were covered with red packets. What was even more terrifying was that there were too many bees, and they were squeezing around. Many of them even crawled into their sleeves or stung them through their outer robes. Most of them couldn't sting them through their clothes. However, there were always a few that could really sting them. In addition, the bees crawled into their sleeves and collars. In the blink of an eye, all the beast cultivators who followed the woman in red rolled on the ground and began to wail in pain. Good. Chu Tianfeng felt his back go numb. He didn't even know how to describe the scene in front of him. His ears were filled with buzzing sounds, and his eyes were filled with a dense swarm of bees flying back and forth. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Meng Qi, only to find that the girl was also staring at the array. "So scary," Meng Qi murmured, "but it's also very powerful." F*ck. Chu Tianfeng wanted to roast her. "Big sister, didn't you know it was this powerful before you used it?" "Four extremes array. It's the four extremes array," the woman in red screamed. Her sharp voice instantly pierced through the clouds. "How can you? Who the hell are you?" She cast a spell, no longer caring about her subordinates who were still rolling on the ground and wailing, and barely managed to protect herself. The transparent barrier separated the densely packed bees. If she was too close, she could still see them crawling around on top of the barrier. The woman in red was shocked and scared, completely panicking. The four extremes array was too intimidating in the demon realm. In fact, if she tried a little, she would find that with her realm, she could completely break out of the array in half an hour at most. But she didn't dare to move at all. Countless emotions flashed through the woman in red's eyes, and she looked at Meng Qi with inexplicable horror. This young female cultivator who was only in the foundation building realm looked so calm and composed. Her gaze was as clear as a cold mountain spring. Separated by the constantly flying and crawling bees, the woman in red felt that the elegant girl in front of her was so terrifying. Gradually, she even overlapped with the few great celestial demons in the demon realm whom she didn't even dare to mention behind her back. "I," she murmured and opened her mouth, feeling that her knees were so weak that she almost couldn't stand. Those great celestial demons were all the most outstanding adults in the celestial demon White Tiger royal family. He wanted to help Xing and reminded her. "When did you come to the three realms?" "I just arrived today." Xing reacted and lowered her body again. "I've never hurt any cultivator, and I don't plan to hurt any cultivators. Father sent me here to find Mother, who left us to the three realms 100 years ago." Meng Qi. Su Junmo looked at Meng Qi. She's indeed not a guy like Xing Yang. She can be trusted. He paused. During this period of time with Meng Qi, Su Junmo felt that he had grasped some of Meng Qi's temper. Speaking of which, you're quite similar to her. She's also very nice to female cultivators in the demon realm. When some female cultivators who were bullied came to her, she would always stand up for them. She's quite famous among female cultivators in the demon realm. Meng Qi didn't speak. Su Junmo said again, aren't you also very nice to female cultivators? You're quite ruthless to male cultivators when you ask for spirit stones, but very generous to female cultivators. Is that so? Meng Qi didn't think so herself. She used to treat everyone equally, but now she was just trying to prevent herself from being unlucky. Moreover, Xing's father is quite different from the rest of the Crimson Fox race. He's aloof from worldly affairs and is a famous tycoon in the Crimson Fox race. She's also the only daughter in the family, so she has a lot of spirit stones, Su Junmo hurriedly added. As he spoke, he gave Xing a look. Xing was stunned and still couldn't react. Her father was indeed famous for being aloof from worldly affairs in the Crimson Fox race. However, the demon realm revered power. Countless people mocked the father and daughter in front of and behind their backs, saying that it was useless for them to lie on a pile of spirit stones. They were the biggest idiots in the Crimson Fox race. Su Junmo sighed softly and could only explain. He pointed at Meng Qi and then at Xing and the subordinates behind her. She's going to capture you and exchange you for spirit stones. You and your divine devouring vine are worth 200 grade 8 spirit stones. Your subordinates are worth 200 grade 7 spirit stones each. Xing felt a wave of dizziness in her head. Because her father only liked to earn spirit stones, she was also mocked by the Crimson Fox race since she was young. So this lord also likes spirit stones? Xing didn't know why, but she suddenly felt a warm feeling in her heart. It was as if the grievances and mockery she had suffered since she was young were nothing. Someone who knew the four extremes array and could make Su Junmo follow him. Such a powerful lord also likes spirit stones. Xing immediately took out a brocade pouch from her storage bag and held it in her hands respectfully. My lord, here are 100 grade 9 spirit stones. Xing asked carefully, I don't know where to find my mother, and I don't know anyone in the Trichiliocasm. I don't know anything, so can I stay by your side? Then you have to make a soul oath. Su Junmo was still worried about the Crimson Fox clan. When you're in the Trichiliocasm, you will never hurt Meng Qi. Yes. Xing immediately put her index finger and thumb on her chest. I swear on my soul that I will never hurt Meng Qi in this life. If I violate this oath, the god ancestor will abandon me, and the light of the stars will never shine on me. After Xing made the oath, she stood up happily. Su Junmo shook his head and waved his hand. Her subordinates were all sent back to the demon realm in an instant. Xing looked around and looked at the item in Su Junmo's hand. She did not say anything. It was normal for Su Junmo to follow and protect a lord who knew the four extreme arrays, even if he was a foundation establishment cultivator. Meng Qi. Xing took the initiative to ask, where are we going now? Her dress was like fire, and her eyes were like stars. Her face was stunning. To be able to give birth to such a beautiful daughter, her mother must also be a beauty. Meng Qi stared at her for a while. He thought about all the people he had met in his previous life, but he could not find a female cultivator he knew who could give birth to such a beautiful daughter. We still have to catch the demon cultivator with the divine devouring vine, Meng Qi said. It was still early. If they could catch one more, they could exchange it for 100 spirit stones. Although he knew that it was not very possible, the auction house might only be short of a few hundred spirit stones. I'll help you. Xing immediately said, the one leading the team here this time is the grandson of the seventh elder, Xing Changlai. She snorted and said disdainfully, when he was in the demon realm, he often bullied the weak and snatched beautiful female cultivators. Among the girls that Su Junmo sent back, 2 of them were snatched by him. After a night of pampering, he casually threw them to his subordinates. Luckily, I saw them and brought them back in time. Otherwise, they might have been tortured to death. Sikong Xing became angrier as she spoke. But I couldn't save them in time. I don't know how many girls were ruined by him. Meng Qi, let's catch him, castrate him, and exchange him for spirit stones. I'll help you. Okay. Meng Qi nodded and asked, "He's also a rank 4? Yes. Sikong Xing said, and he has many subordinates. At least 40 to 50 of them. Among them, 6 or 7 are just rank 4. The rest are all rank 3. Meng Qi quickly calculated. Okay. Let's catch them. Let's use the 4 extremes formation. Sikong Xing said, Sikong Changlai will definitely be scared to tears. She snorted. He often claims to be a direct descendant of ancestor Fox. Chapter 54. Qin Xiaomo ignored Chu Tianfeng's disdainful gaze and continued faintly, "Didn't she just say that there are 40 or 50 people on the other side, including several 4th-rank demon cultivators? One more person means one more chance of success. In the end, it's fine to divide the spirit stones according to contribution." He calmly finished speaking, and temporarily endured Sikong Xing's words that he couldn't do it. "That's fine." Meng Qi nodded. She didn't care about the eye contact between Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaomo at all, and walked straight towards the array. Sikong Xing was standing beside Su Junmo at this moment, watching in shock as Meng Qi took out materials from the storage bag and set up 2 new arrays in the open space. Her movements were very familiar, as if the 4 extreme arrays, which made the demon world tremble with fear, were her innate instinct. Not only Sikong Xing, but even Su Junmo was a little dazed. "So," Sikong Xing murmured, "who exactly is she? When did the Sky Demon White Tiger clan have such a young and beautiful lady? How did I?" She was suddenly shocked, and her beautiful eyes widened as she turned to look at Su Junmo. Su Junmo looked back at Sikong Xing seriously and slowly nodded. "What you're thinking now is probably the correct answer. Sikong Xing looked down at her hand. "I pinched her cheek." She was a little dazed. Su Junmo was by her side, and she knew the 4 extreme arrays. If her guess wasn't wrong, this cultivator who looked very young should be that lady's lover. Just now, he had pinched her cheek. Sikong Xing raised his head and continued to look at Meng Qi anxiously. The blue figure was busy in the open space, and retreated after a moment. "Let's divide the work." Meng Qi put away the rest of the materials and turned to look at Sikong Xing. "How many people are there in total?" "Yes." Sikong Xing was in a daze for a moment before coming back to his senses. She thought for a moment and said seriously, "Sikong Changlai and the 3 people who often follow him are all at the 4th rank. Other than that, his father had also sent 2 people to protect him. Those 2 people should be rank 4 or rank 7 or 8. In addition to his personal bodyguard captains, there are a total of 8 4th-rank martial artists." Meng Qi nodded, a little embarrassed. 8 rank 4s. On their side, Sikong Xing only had 2 rank 4 martial artists, and he himself was only a rank 4. If they were to really go all out, their strength on paper was indeed much weaker. However, Sikong Changlai and his 3 companions are very fond of beauties. Moreover, he is extremely arrogant and conceited. He calls himself the #1 expert of the same generation as Scarlet Fox. Sikong Xing calmed down. She had disliked Sikong Changlai since a long time ago. The demon clan's kinship was very thin to begin with. Sikong Changlai had once relied on the fact that his father was an elder. His family had quite a bit of authority in the Scarlet Fox clan, and he had a very powerful great demon backing him. He had wanted to humiliate Sikong Xing many times. Sikong Xing's cultivation base was not bad. Coupled with her quick wits, she was able to escape from his hands. She had long hated him to the core. Over the years, among the Scarlet Fox clan and the demon cultivators who belonged to the Scarlet Fox clan, countless female cultivators had fallen into Sikong Changlai's hands. In the end, their fates were miserable. She could save 2, but in the end, she could not save too many. Sikong Changlai is very fond of beauties and is extremely proud. If we use beauties as bait, we can definitely make him lower his guard. Yes. Meng Qi nodded and looked towards Chu Tianfeng and the other 2. Meng Qi. Si Kongxing followed her gaze and could not help but laugh. He likes girls. Oh. Meng Qi nodded. Here's what I'm thinking. I'll pretend to be injured by you guys and lure him to save us. Si Kongxing did not hide anything. With his personality, he'll definitely take the opportunity to come here and taunt me, telling me to listen to him obediently. At that time, we'll take the opportunity to capture them all in one fell swoop. She looked at the empty space. The Scarlet Fox clan is not good at formations. Even if he can see that there's a formation here, he won't be able to guess that. Si Kongxing shivered and did not even dare to mention the Four Extremes formation. It's such a powerful formation. As long as we can trap him for a moment, Su Junmo and I, along with these two, can attack together and kill at least 3 to 4 of their fourth ranks. This way, even if the rest of them escape in the chaos, they'll still be injured. That's a good idea. Meng Qi nodded. She walked towards the empty space. If that's the case, I can also make some changes to half of the formation. As she spoke, she began to move. Si Kongxing and Su Junmo could not help but look at each other. They were both true yarrow cultivators. They had grown up listening to the legend of the white tiger ancestor, relying on the Four Extremes formation to maneuver unhindered. You'll get used to it. Su Junmo whispered to Si Kongxing she knows a lot. Millimeter. Si Kongxing nodded. Do you really plan to stay in the 3,000 worlds and not go back? Su Junmo asked again, what about your father? I want to find my mother first. Si Kongxing said. She paused and looked at Su Junmo. Father said that the Star-Lord token will soon reappear in the 9 heavens. Ever since His Majesty left the Yarrow realm, many forces have begun to stir. It's already a mess. When the time comes, the entire 9 heavens will be in chaos. Father won't be able to come to the 3,000 worlds. He's from the Black Tortoise clan, so, as Si Kongxing spoke, she put her right index and middle fingers together and opened an oval-shaped barrier. The barrier wasn't big, and dark green light flashed. It looked like a thick, turtle shell. Ah! Su Junmo was speechless, which was rare. You don't cultivate the Crimson Fox clan's cultivation method? My father said that living is the most important thing for a demon to live. So when I was very young, he begged his good friend to teach me the Black Tortoise clan's cultivation method. He also found many cultivation methods that can temper the body for me to learn. I don't even know how many medicinal pills I've eaten. Even if Sikong Changlai suddenly goes crazy, I guarantee that I can protect Meng Qi. Sikongxing said, at least I can hold on until you guys come back. Qin Xiumor didn't say anything. He raised his hand and summoned his natal long sword. The sword was sharp, and it suddenly attacked the tortoise-shell-like barrier as fast as lightning. With a soft clang, the barrier easily withstood the attack, and the light was not damaged at all. Chu Tianfeng flicked 3 flames from his finger. The orange flames suddenly approached the barrier and only extinguished after a while. Sikongxing sat next to Meng Qi with a smile, hugging her knees. She didn't feel anything at all. Impressive. Su Junmo didn't try. He was a heaven demon and knew how powerful the Black Tortoise clan was. He stretched out his finger and lightly flicked the barrier. Looks like you've learned a lot from the Black Tortoise clan. Not really. My master taught me for 12 years, and I've learned a lot of life-saving skills. Then let's go. Su Junmo was relieved. He still looked deeply at Sikongxing and exchanged a look that only the two of them could understand. Then, he called out to Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiumor. Sikong Changlai has the help of the divine devouring vine, so it's easy for him to scout the surroundings. We'll each choose a place that we can rush back to within 15 minutes to hide. After Sikongxing attracts Sikong Changlai, we'll quickly return. After Su Junmo finished speaking, he waved his hand. The 3 of them each chose a direction and rushed away. Sikongxing watched as they walked away. She raised her hand and withdrew the barrier. She smiled softly and said to Meng Qi, "Do those 2 like you?" "No." Meng Qi said, "We're a team to earn spirit stones together." Sikongxing chuckled, pursed his lips, and stopped talking. She actually wanted to say that it was a pity that Meng Qi was with that heaven demon white tiger. Otherwise, It wouldn't be a big deal to have a few more lovers. She softly hummed a tune. After about 5 minutes, she stretched out her hand and picked up the silver bell. The crisp sound of the bell could be heard. Ding, ding, ding. The sound wasn't loud, but Xing was very confident. Mengqi didn't ask anything. When the last Crimson Fox clan member stepped into the range of the formation, Mengqi suddenly rolled and dodged Xikong Changlia's hand that was about to touch her cheek. She jumped up and threw out the spirit stones in her hand. The sparkling spirit stones instantly flew to her feet. The first formation lit up and was completely activated. In the blink of an eye, layers of light spread out along the formation she had drawn earlier. It happened so quickly that it seemed to have happened at the same time. The entire empty space lit up as all the formations were activated. Mengqi pulled Xing back and stepped into the protective barrier she had set up earlier. Interesting. Xikong Changlai stood there calmly as he looked at Mengqi with a faint smile. Although I like delicate and charming beauties, a cold and thorny one has a different taste. As he spoke, he looked around casually. Even if I let you activate all the formations, you can't. Huh. The calmness on Xikong Changlia's face instantly disappeared as he revealed the same shocked expression as Xing. This is the Four Extremes formation? His voice suddenly became sharp as his gaze shot towards Mengqi like a sharp blade. Who are you? Xing sneered as she stood beside Mengqi. Her red dress was like fire. Xikong Changlai, you even recognized the Four Extremes formation. Who do you think she is? I don't believe it. Xikong Changlia's expression changed as he suddenly shouted. So what if it's the Four Extremes formation? He looked at Mengqi with a grim smile. She's just a Foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, that person has already fallen into the Starfall Sea and her whereabouts are unknown. She can't even protect herself. Now, all we have to do is wait for the Demon Lord token to reappear and the Demon Realm will change masters. I'm not afraid of him. Although he said this, his gaze still drifted around. Even if he comes personally, I'm not afraid either. Xikong Changlai, has anyone ever told you that when you're talking tough, your teeth should never tremble, and your legs and hands shouldn't tremble so much? Xing mocked. Those who don't know might think something's wrong with you. Me. Xikong Changlai snorted coldly. You're stalling for time. Don't even think about it. As he spoke, he raised his hand. Including himself, the 8 fourth-stage demon cultivators on his side all moved. Mengqi took a deep breath and waved his hand again, throwing out another handful of spirit stones. Green smoke emerged as a dense swarm of bees once again occupied the entire space. Sir, step back. Let the two of us do it. The 2 fourth-stage 8th realm demon cultivators sent by Xikong Changlia's father stepped forward. The two of them took a deep breath as surging spiritual energy swept out in all directions. Those bees were instantly blown into a mess, unable to get close to them at all. Mengqi let out a muffled groan. The difference in cultivation was too great. She also knew that she was pushing it too far. Previously, Xing was afraid in her heart. In addition, she didn't really want to become enemies with Mengqi in the first place, so she admitted defeat. If they really fought head-on, Mengqi wouldn't be Xing's opponent. Seeing the two guards like this, Xikong Changlai sneered and said, "What Four Extremes formation? So it's just this." He quickly calmed down and activated the spiritual energy in his body with his friends and subordinates at the same time. Surging spiritual energy spread out in all directions. The surrounding leaves seemed to be swept away by a gust of wind. The entire space was filled with sand and stones. Even the light of the formation dimmed by a lot. It looked like the formation would be completely destroyed in less than half an incense's time. A hint of anxiety flashed across Xing's face. She stood beside Mengqi and glanced towards the forest. Xikong Changlai laughed softly. Waiting for reinforcements. I'm afraid it's too late. As he spoke, he leapt up with a long howl. The place where he was standing just now was pierced by countless sharp swords. That was another variation of the Four Extremes formation that Mengqi had activated. Taking advantage of the chaos, he stabbed towards Sikong Changlai. She suddenly groaned again. A trace of blood flowed down the corner of her lips. Are you okay? Meng Qi shook her head. She carelessly wiped the blood from the corner of her lips and threw out another handful of spirit stones. She was just about to forcibly activate the formation to launch another wave of attacks. It would be fine as long as she could delay until Su Junmo and the others returned. Don't be afraid. A gentle and pleasant male voice suddenly sounded beside her ear. Meng Qi suddenly froze and subconsciously looked around. Apart from Sikong Xing, who was anxiously looking at her, there was no one around her. What's wrong? Sikong Xing hurriedly asked. No. Meng Qi shook her head, thinking that she had misheard. Although that voice only said 2 words, it was so familiar. It was a voice that she had heard for 3 years. Even if it was a lifetime ago, she would never mistake it. She must have misheard because she was too anxious. Meng Qi shook her head. This was not the time to be in a daze. She was just about to continue activating the formation when that voice sounded beside her ear again. Let Sikong Xing use the Mystic Thunder Seal to protect you. Meng Qi paused and subconsciously said, Mystic Thunder Seal. Sikong Xing use the Mystic Thunder Seal to protect me. Sikong Xing paused and drew an arc in the air with his fingers. Lightning flashed and protected Meng Qi. That voice sounded beside Meng Qi's ear again. Hold a 9th rank spirit stone in your left hand. Yes. Meng Qi's voice was slightly hoarse. Without hesitation, she took out the spirit stone from her storage bag and held it in her hand. Relax, don't think about anything. Don't worry about your right hand. That voice said again. Okay. Meng Qi's eyes were slightly hot. Her entire body was completely relaxed and she was extremely obedient. In the next instant, her completely relaxed body suddenly started to move quickly. Meng Qi's slender body, dressed in a green robe, suddenly retreated to the edge of the formation. Sikong Xing did not dare to relax. The Mystic Thunder Seal completely enveloped her. She saw Meng Qi, who was protected by the lightning, start to move nimbly. Meng Qi first took out a handful of materials from her storage bag. Then, she moved quickly along the edge of the formation that had almost been completely destroyed by Sikong Changlai and the others. Her movements were so fast that Sikong Xing did not even have time to see what she was doing. Meng Qi's figure flashed and she flashed to another location. She kept adding things to the formation. Sometimes, she would throw a spirit stone, sometimes she would put down some materials, and sometimes she would just modify a section of the formation's lines. Shooting. Meng Qi did not actually do much. It was just that her figure was too fast. However, no matter how fast she was, she looked as natural and unhurried as flowing water. The sleeves of her green robe fluttered. Under the illumination of the formation's fluorescent light, that elegant little face actually had a bit of a spirit that looked down on the world. It was not just Sikong Xing. Even Sikong Changlai and the others widened their eyes in surprise. Meng Qi was clearly still that little foundation establishment cultivator. However, her movements were so imposing. They were only stunned for a moment. Sikong Changlai suddenly reacted. Quickly break the formation. Don't worry about her. A light laugh came from Meng Qi's mouth. Formation, what is there to be afraid of? She raised her eyes and looked coldly at Sikong Changlai. She raised her hand. The 9th rank spirit stone in her palm shone brightly and flew towards the formation under her feet. The formation lit up. Meng Qi stood in the center just like that. The Mystic Thunder Seal around her slowly dissipated. She pointed to the sky with one hand. She was actually using herself as a medium. It was clearly daytime, but one could clearly see faint starlight sprinkling down like water, enveloping Meng Qi within. Sikong Changlai was completely dumbfounded. Even the 2 bodyguards that his father had sent to protect him looked at Meng Qi in surprise. What is this? What happened? The green gas in the formation had clearly disappeared. The densely packed bees had also turned into smoke and dissipated. However, not only did the formation's light not weaken, it was even brighter than before. However, they only felt a bone-deep chill rise from the soles of their feet. Chapter 55. Sikong Changlia's face was abnormally pale. The killing intent within the array soared to the heavens. He felt as though he was about to be frozen into ice. His hands that were hanging by his side were trembling slightly. He didn't dare to continue attacking the array with the spell that he had already formed. Tap tap. A few drops of sweat rolled down Sikong Changlia's chin and landed on a piece of blood jade on his clothes. You. His teeth chattered, and his voice was so hoarse that he couldn't speak. Young master. Two Scarlet Fox men who were responsible for Sikong Changlia's safety stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Let's fight it out with her. He's just a Foundation establishment cultivator." Shut up. Sikong Changlia's finger trembled slightly. He stared unblinkingly at the green-robed girl standing in front of him. The ancestor of the Crimson Fox clan had once lost his life in the 4 extreme formations. The Fox ancestor was a direct ancestor of Sikong Changlia's lineage. He had truly grown up listening to the legends of the 4 extreme arrays. In addition, in the past 10,000 years, the White Tiger clan had dominated the demon realm and produced several star monarchs. Sikong Changlia had received his father's advice since he was young. His fear of the 4 extreme formations was rooted in his blood. Young master. The captain and vice-captain of the guards also took a step closer to him and whispered to him, "What should we do?" Killing intent enveloped the entire area, and none of Sikong Changlia's subordinates were spared. They only felt a bone-piercing chill, and their fighting spirit instantly dissipated. Fear seeped out from the depths of his heart. It was impossible to suppress it. Kill. Kill. Lead the formation. Sikong Changlia's lips trembled slightly. Only that person. He stared at Meng Qi as he spoke. Outside the formation, the green-robed girl's long black hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin. She pointed a finger at the sky. The starlight coated her with a layer of soft light. Her elegant little face was as cold as ice. Her gaze was like a snowy mountain lake, incomparably cold as she looked at him. Sikong Changlia had never thought that there would be a day when he would actually be stared at by a Foundation establishment cultivator to the point that his back would go numb, to the point where he didn't even dare to move. He stared warily at Meng Qi's raised arm. As long as he waved it down, he would do it. Meng Qi's gaze suddenly swept behind Sikong Changlia and the others as he shouted softly, "Hey!" The Crimson Fox cultivators within the formation were all stunned. Before they could react, raging flames suddenly rose from the soles of their feet. The space that was filled with killing intent and bone-chilling cold suddenly became incomparably hot. Their mission was to escort him back to the Yarrow realm safely. The 4 extremes formation had thrown them into chaos. Now that they had calmed down, they quickly realized that the flames and sword shadows didn't do much damage to them. At the very least, they weren't fatal. As for the main killing formation of the legendary 4 extremes formation, if it really was a Yarrow, if it was that person who had personally acted, how could they have survived until now? That was a super killing formation that had caused even the incomparably powerful old fox ancestor's soul to scatter. Sikong Changlia took a deep breath as his eyes turned completely red. As he looked at Meng Qi, his gaze gradually turned fierce. "Do it, Sikong Changlia." Su Junmo's voice came from the tree opposite Meng Qi. "I've already warned you, don't let me run into you outside of Crimson Fox territory. The day I run into you will be the day you die. Also, I've already said that I'll definitely let you die a horrible death. Chang." Difficult. Look. Even if they were all going to act, Su Junmo's words were still more than the others. Su Junmo. Sikong Changlia abruptly turned around. Before he could say anything, he heard the sound of wind whoosh whoosh whoosh. The white-clothed Su Junmo instantly turned into 12 figures, surrounding the entire ground from all directions. No matter where Sikong Changlia looked, he could see Su Junmo standing tall on the treetops, his white robes fluttering in the wind. He could look down on a Jindan Shouja, but Su Junmo was a 4th-grade Yarrow cultivator like him. Not only that, his realm was even higher than his. "Today, I want to see if you can still be so arrogant without your father's help. Sikong Changlia, if you're a man, then fight me one-on-one." Don't always call for reinforcements. Are you still a child? Ah. I forgot that this is the 3000 worlds. Even if you want to call for reinforcements, you won't be able to. Your father must be very sad that he won't be able to protect his child today. The 12 Su Junmo spoke at the same time. Their voices seemed to come from 12 directions at the same time. Their voices rumbled. Even Chu Tianfeng and the others couldn't help but frown. Sikong Chang Lai was so angry that his face darkened. Su Junmo. You dare to humiliate my father, I'll definitely. Go back and complain to your father, I know. Other than the art of crying and complaining to your father, what else do you know? Right, Sikong Xing. Sikong Xing couldn't help but laugh. He even knows how to complain to his grandfather. Ha 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 ha. Amidst Su Junmo's loud laughter, a dark green net suddenly rose from the ground. Countless dark green vines intertwined to form a giant net. As soon as it appeared, it revealed its ferocious claws and teeth and pounced towards the crimson fox yarrow cultivators. Sikong Xing took a step forward and raised her delicate hand. Her master was from the Black Tortoise clan. Black tortoises weren't good at killing, but in the Yarrow realm where strength reigned supreme, they were a royal clan that was on par with the heavenly demon White Tiger. No yarrow cultivator dared to underestimate their strength. Sikong Xing raised a single hand. A giant black wave rose. Amidst the sword lights and dark green vines, it attacked the crimson fox yarrow cultivators like adding oil to fire. We've been tricked. One of Sikong Chang Lai's guards said sternly. What for extreme formation, the main killing formation? It's all a smoke screen. They purposely used it to make us cower. Otherwise, why would they need to use so many methods? Young master. As he spoke, he grabbed Sikong Chang Lai's arm and pulled him behind him. Don't think about that for extreme formation. That woman is just a foundational Xiuzhe. How could she know such a killing formation? Counterattack. You dare to trick me. Sikong Chang Lai finally reacted. Amidst the wails of his subordinates, he looked savagely at Meng Qi. When you fall into my hands, I will definitely make you wish you were dead. I will let you know the consequences of deceiving me. He abruptly tore off the blood jade around his neck and began to mutter an incantation. Careful. Sikong Xing, who was the closest, took a step and blocked in front of Meng Qi. Her gaze became grave. Sikong Chang Lai is going to fight with his life on the line. Meng Qi's expression was still cold. Her arm that was still pointing towards the sky had not been lowered. The starlight on her body became denser and denser. It's fine. She said faintly, it's just a small trick. Ha ha, Sikong Chang Lai laughed savagely. His hand that was holding the blood jade turned red. Behind him, the shadow of an enormous red fox slowly appeared. The shadow became clearer and clearer. Gradually, one could see the long fur on the enormous red fox's body that was blown by the wind. Behind the red fox, 8 tails vigorously extended in all directions. Ancestor Red Fox. Ancestor Red Fox. It's the Ancestor Red Fox's blood jade. Even Sikong Xing and Su Junmo's expressions became grave. Although Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiumo did not know what the Ancestor Red Fox was, they also felt the pressure that suddenly increased. Small tricks. Come and break it. Sikong Chang Lai laughed savagely and suddenly charged towards the edge of the formation. I want to see how powerful your 4 extreme formation is. Can it block my Ancestor Red Fox's attack? Of course. Meng Qi pointed her fingers like a knife and finally lowered her raised arm. The starlight around her had already condensed into a solid form. She raised the corner of her lips, and her smile was as sharp as a knife. A bunch of idiots. No one could say for sure what had happened. The formation on Meng Qi's ground suddenly exploded with a brilliant light. The light soared into the sky, and her green robe fluttered in the wind. Her long hair fluttered as she stood in the light. It was as if she was the ruler of the world, looking down on her subjects. 7 luminaries. It's the 7 luminaries formation. Sikong Chang Lai screamed as he covered his eyes and retreated. 7 luminaries. Ancestor Red Fox. Ancestor Red Fox, save me. Ha ha, Meng Qi chuckled lightly. She looked up at the red fox's shadow in the air. Break. She pointed her finger, and the starlight shot towards the red fox's shadow. The red fox's shadow, which looked very imposing and oppressive just a moment ago, was instantly corroded by the starlight. It turned into specks of light and disappeared. I saw the blood jade on your neck, Meng Qi said faintly amidst Sikong Chang Lai's screams. On the empty ground, the flames were still burning, and the red lotus floated in the air. Wherever Qin Shimo pointed, sword shadows would rain down, and miserable screams could be heard. The dark green vines weaved into a net, stopping every red fox demon cultivator who wanted to escape. Under the command of Sikong Shing's slender hands, huge black waves rose and fell, each wave higher than the last. Finally, there was the starlight. It was even more resplendent than the summer sun. Wherever it went, even the two strongest 4th stage 8th realm bodyguards did not dare to open their eyes. The starlight devoured the strength and aura of all the red fox demon cultivators. They gradually lost their auras, and slowly collapsed. The empty ground seemed to have turned into an azura's field. One red fox demon cultivator after another fell. When everything settled down, not a single red fox demon cultivator was left standing. Sikong Shing slowly let out a long breath. The clothes on her back were already drenched. She had experienced battles that were more dangerous and intense than this, but she had never experienced a battle like today, where she won despite being outnumbered. In a situation where the opponent's strength was several times their own, her own people were actually unharmed. Sikong Shing slowly lowered her hand, and subconsciously turned to look at Meng Qi. The green-robed girl's small face was pale, and her forehead was covered in sweat. However, she still gritted her teeth, and her whole body relaxed, standing motionlessly in the center of the formation. Her green-robed body trembled slightly, as if she would collapse at any moment. Meng Qi. The 12 Su Junmo merged into one, and swept down from the treetops. Yu, Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiumor looked at each other, and also jumped down from the treetops, quickly walking towards Meng Qi. The 4 of them quickly walked to Meng Qi's side, and surrounded her in the center. Are you all right? Sikong Shing asked. Aye. As soon as Meng Qi opened her mouth, even she was shocked. Her voice was hoarse, as if it had been rubbed by rough sandpaper. Her whole body was weak, and her completely overdrawn spiritual sea was in extreme pain. Her whole body was so weak, as if a gust of wind could blow her away. I'm not. Before she could finish her sentence, her whole body fell backward. Be careful. Chu Tianfeng was standing behind her, and he reached out to catch Meng Qi. Meng Qi was in a trance. She felt as if her body didn't belong to her, and the sharp pain tore at her head. In her dry and overdrawn spiritual sea, it was as if there were countless small knives cutting her spiritual sea. She was in so much pain that she wanted to roll around, but she couldn't find where the pain came from. Be careful. She heard someone say behind her, and 2 hands were placed on her shoulders, as if to support her. Millimeter. Meng Qi subconsciously thanked them in a low voice, thank you. Surrounded by companions that she could trust for the time being, she closed her eyes and let herself faint. Then, Chu Tianfeng was dumbfounded. He looked down at his empty hands. Just now, when Meng Qi fell backward, he was the closest to her. He immediately reached out to catch her, and his hand had already touched the green robe on her body. Meng Qi even said thank you to him. In the next moment, the other party waved her right hand and slapped him in the chest, forcing him to take a few steps back. She didn't use much strength in that slap, and it wasn't to hurt him. She just used her strength skillfully. Chu Tianfeng didn't even have time to react. After being pushed away, he still maintained the same posture of catching her. He looked up in a daze. Meng Qi had fallen into Sikong Shing's arms. Meng Qi. Sikong Shing didn't think so much. She quickly caught Meng Qi and carefully let her lean on her body. Meng Qi wasn't short among the female cultivators, but her figure was thin, and she looked like a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Sikong Shing was slightly taller than her. She reached out and held Meng Qi's waist, letting her head rest on her shoulder. She fainted. Sikong Shing reached out and put the tip of Meng Qi's nose to test it. Her breathing is still stable. Chu Tianfeng. Even if she fainted, she didn't want to fall into his arms. Was she instinctively rejecting him? He felt a little uncomfortable in his heart, and he slowly walked back in silence. She must have overdrawn her spiritual aura, so she fainted. Su Junmo said in a low voice, "Let's go back to Hua Jiang Mansion first." He looked at Meng Qi, who had fainted in Xing's arms with a complicated expression. "Xing, I can only trouble you." "No problem." Xing breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that it was just overdrawn spiritual aura. After all, she was a fourth-stage Yarrow cultivator. Although she looked like a slender and stunning beauty, her strength was naturally not weak. Xing reached out and put her right hand around Meng Qi's shoulder. Her left hand reached out from under her knees and carried her horizontally. Meng Qi was so powerful just now. She lowered her head and looked at Meng Qi's little face. Meng Qi's face was pale, and her long eyelashes drooped down, casting a small shadow on her fair cheeks. She clearly looked weak and frail, so why was she so powerful? Xing's eyes lit up, and her eyes were full of longing. She's really too powerful. I've decided, I'll always stay by Meng Qi's side. I like this kind of girl the most. Su Junmo, Chu Tianfeng, Qin Xiumo. Even in the beast house in Meng Qi's storage bag, little Qi, who was listlessly lying on the bamboo bed, seemed to have overdrawn all of his strength. Suddenly, he raised his eyes. His azure blue eyes dimmed to the extreme. Blood was still slowly seeping out of his front paw, which required Meng Qi to change the dressing and bandage it every day. Bright red bloodstains had seeped through the soft white cloth that wrapped the wound. The originally clean and soft white fur on his body had lost its luster. Little Qi's semicircular ears shook slightly. The dark power that had been devouring his spiritual aura, which he had suppressed with great difficulty, seemed to have sensed his absent-mindedness. In an instant, it became even more ferocious. His body trembled slightly, and he had no choice but to lie down again. Xing said something else, but little Qi didn't react at all, as if he didn't hear anything at all. At the same time, outside Hua Jiang Manor, in a forest some distance away from Meng Qi, Lu Qing ran cautiously followed behind the black-clothed male Xiu. From time to time, she raised her head to look at the tall figure in front of her. They had already been searching here for a long time. She didn't know when they would be able to kill a yarrow cultivator and pay off their debt. Thinking of the scene of being forced to pay off their debt that day, Lu Qingran's eyes became somewhat hot again. She had been spoiled since she was a child. She had truly never suffered such grievances. It seemed, the way those cultivators of the Cultivator Alliance looked at her was as if she was a scoundrel who owed money but didn't pay it back. Woo-woo. Heh, so the highest level is only a 4th-grade yarrow cultivator. The black-clothed male Xiu was still wearing his bamboo hat. He stopped under a tree, his finger brushing the marks on the tree. This is enough to make those cultivators feel as if they are facing a great enemy. TSK, Lu Qingran looked at him. She gently bit her lower lip, wanting to speak, but thinking of the man's temper, she didn't say anything in the end. "What do you want to say?" The male Xiu glanced back at her, his voice cold. "Say it. Earlier, we clearly encountered 2 3rd-grade yarrow cultivators. Why didn't you capture them and exchange them for spirit stones first?" Lu Qingran mustered up her courage and asked. "A group of 3rd-grade and 4th-grade yarrow cultivators. Do you want me to hunt them down one by one?" Chapter 56. From Meng Qi to the city gate, 4 or 5 groups of people passed her on the short road. They had obviously come together and were discussing something as they walked. The more Meng Qi looked, the more worried she became. Of course, she did not think that these people were all here for the Jiyu. The Jiyu was indeed rare and could not attract so many people. Most of the people who passed by her in a hurry looked to be middle-aged cultivators in their 40s. Regardless of gender, they were all tall and straight and had outstanding temperaments. At a glance, one could tell that they were not ordinary cultivators. Even if these people were here for other things, Meng Qi would have no hope of getting the Jiyu if they called out a price when they saw it. She became more and more anxious. It was not easy to meet the Jiyu in the Trichilia chasm. Was she going to miss it just like that? Meng Qi quickened her pace and walked towards the city gate. She had not been to the heaven-class auction house before. After asking the manager at the city gate, she hurriedly stepped into the teleportation array. She left in a hurry and did not notice that the manager of Sky Beyond Heaven behind her was looking at her with a flash of surprise on his face. The floating island where the heaven-class auction house was located was the third highest of the 7 floating islands in Sky Beyond Heaven. Not far to its left was the Sky Beyond Heaven Tower. Standing here, one could see the main building of the Sky Beyond Heaven Tower. Other than that, it was not much different from the heaven-class auction house. Meng Qi walked out of the teleportation array, identified the direction, and walked forward. Xue Jinwen had mentioned to her that the floating island used as an auction house was usually in the middle of the floating island. There would be some courtyards around where appraisers like her and Lin Mo who worked for the auction house would live. The scenery on the floating island was still very beautiful. The clouds in the distance were rolling and the sky was a curtain. The island was filled with birds and fragrant flowers. It was elegant and grand. She subconsciously looked up at the highest floating island in the sky. Meng Qi's fingers that were hanging by her side trembled slightly. The voice from yesterday in the suburbs seemed to appear in her mind again. Don't be afraid. Relax. And the last formation, the aura and pride that looked down on the world. Was it him? Meng Qi's eyelids narrowed slightly. She did not mention this to anyone. At first, she thought it was an illusion. But the opponent was too strong. He had actually used the messy array she had set up to complete the modification of the array so calmly and casually. 7 planets formation. Meng Qi thought of the name of the formation that scared Sikong Changlai out of his wits. She wouldn't. This was one of the arrays that she had heard of, but her master had never taught her. As the 3 of them slowly walked forward, he asked, "Young friend, have you seen Heavenly Wind?" "Yes." Meng Qi nodded. Just now, they had divided the money they earned from the Cultivator Alliance. "Ha." Zun Yang smiled quite happily. "Young friend, when you said you were coming to Burning City, Heavenly Wind went into seclusion as soon as he entered the sect. When he came out, he went down the mountain and didn't return. I guessed that he must be with you." Hearing Chu Tianfeng's name, Chu Ji's expression finally changed a little. His gaze swept over Meng Qi's face and finally looked at Zun Yang. Zun Yang was able to become an elder of Burning Sky Palace. His cultivation talent wasn't extremely outstanding, but he had his own strengths. Chu Ji was obviously very confident in him. When he heard that his son was with this young female cultivator, he didn't care too much. "I have indeed been working with young Palace Master Chu to hunt demons these days," Meng Qi explained lightly. "Yes." Zun Yang nodded with a smile. "But compared to you, Heavenly Wind still needs to work harder." He looked at Meng Qi. "Young friend, did you come alone?" "Yes." Meng Qi nodded. "To be able to enter the Heavens Beyond Heaven's auction house at your age, I guess you are the only one in Heavens Beyond Heaven," Zun Yang said with a smile. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. "Young friend, please." As they spoke, they had already arrived outside the Heavens auction house. From beginning to end, Zun Yang didn't ask why Meng Qi was here. He had always been like this, kind and gentle, but would not make people feel offended. Except for calling Meng Qi young friend Meng at the beginning, he didn't mention her surname, nor did he call her full name. He kept a good distance and was thoughtful. Compared to the somewhat cold Chu Ji, Zun Yang was indeed the most suitable person to deal with Burning Sky Palace's external affairs. "Palace Master Chu, Elder Zun, please. Meng Qi was a junior. She stepped aside and politely let the two go first. Then we will go first, Zun Yang said with a smile. If you come to Burning City again, please be sure to come to the palace as a guest. I will definitely welcome you. Please. As he spoke, he smiled and cupped his hands, and entered the Heavens auction house with Chu Ji. Meng Qi watched them go in. She didn't expect to meet an acquaintance in Sky Beyond. But on second thought, the cultivators she met outside Sky Beyond said that the major sects of the Four Realms would come. As one of the top 10 sects in the Eastland, Burning Sky Palace would certainly come. Whatever. Meng Qi took a deep breath and walked into the courtyard in front of her. It was similar to the Xian auction house. It looked like a quaint courtyard, but after stepping in, it was as if she had entered another world. Meng Qi was now in a separate room. There was still a tea table in the room, and there were 3 or 4 futons next to it.